My guest today is co-founder of id Software and designer on classic titles that we all know and love, such as Doom, Wolfenstein 3D, Rise of the Triad, and Commander Keen, among many, many others. I'm very pleased to welcome Tom Hall. Welcome, Tom.
Hello.
So you've impacted countless lives with your games, and that passion started somewhere. What was the very first computer that you owned?
Well, I remember the day, June 9th, 1980. My dad got the family a Apple II Plus, since it was June, I lived on that thing all summer. So I had, done fiction and poetry. I'd done Super 8 short films. I'd done all sorts of creative things, but when we got this, it was like, wow, here's my medium. I love this.
You co-founded id Software in 1991 and worked at SoftDisk before that, and I want to hear about that time. But prior to SoftDisk, what led you to that point in your career?
Well, again, I was just like in love with the Apple II and making a whole bunch of games. I had made like 50 games on the thing, text adventures and graphic demos and all sorts of things. And I got a degree in computer science from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and like all good coder persons, I interviewed with IBM and Gould and everything. But they said, we like you, we like your resume, but they all asked the same question: is this what you really want to do? And I came back from those plant trips and I go, no, this is boring. I want to make games. So I sent out 50 resumes and they all got rejected. And then I waited 3 more months, kind of seeing if maybe this quarter was bad to hire, and then sent out 27 more. And I got one back that said, you're the perfect person. And that was for SoftDisk. And it was like, a third the pay of those other jobs. But I was getting to play on Apple II all day and they'd pay me to do it. So that was fantastic.
I've got your former coworker's book here, Doom Guy. I've been reading
Yes.
through it. It's got a description of you on page 87. John Romero says, as I got to know him, I realized he was probably the most creative person I have ever met. He says you were incredibly funny, friendly, and offered up hilarious turns of phrase and game titles, and I mean, just very creative. I'd like to hear a little bit more about where that creativity started. What were some of the early games that you created, and also what were some of the games that you played that really inspired you in your youth?
Well, I think the first inspiration was my mom and dad. There was a closet by the bathroom, and you open that closet, and there was a chute. You put your clothes in, but above that chute were a bunch of shelves, and it was full of board games, tavern puzzles, Legos, Lincoln Logs. So I was just like, immersed in games in the family. I always played board games or, messed with puzzles and stuff like that. So it just sort of had that mind. And I was also like those tavern puzzles and like Soma Cube, cubic puzzles and stuff. They all kind of taught me 3D thinking in a puzzle fashion. And so it kind of expanded my mind. In addition to that, my dad was a mechanical engineer on this side, and my mom was a journalist. So I kind of got each side of my hem brain. So my corpus callosum is great. I don't think forward very well. Like that's why I need help finding directions and, and living life and figuring out how to survive in the world. But as far as like come up with stuff, that's cool. And after that, that my parents were very encouraging. I think that's the most important environment for a creative person to have is a safe place to sort of think and dream and have those moments of creation, praised and like, oh, that's amazing, that's cool. That like you could be in a very stifling environment and you wouldn't become a creative person. So then after that, in another set of basically three purchases that got me into gaming. One is we got a Unisonic Tournament 2000, which is a essentially a Pong game, but it had 6 different games, and then it had a light gun, so you could play skeet shooting and stuff like that. And that was just magic. You could do this on your TV, like, oh my gosh, like I'm just used to watching it, but now I'm playing on it. How does that work? And then a few years later, there was a big red present under the tree, and like that couldn't be an Atari 2600 because that costs $150. No, no way. But I went, and it was, and oh my gosh! And so my brother and I played that all Christmas, and it was like fantastic. And so I was sort of like sucked into the magic of video game, but it didn't seem necessarily possible. And then my brother gave me like $5 of quarters to go play video games. I think it's because his friend worked in the arcade, so it was essentially a free present that the guy is like, here, just take these quarters and we'll put them in. But I went there and I played Seawolf, and that was cool because it had like a periscope for a controller, and you're shooting boats and stuff and subs. And it was like, wow, I'm getting really good at this. I'm shooting everything in the bonus round before they come on screen, everything. Like, I'm amazing at this. And I was leaving the arcade and I go like, wait a second. Like I shot everything before it came on the screen. Like it's just a pattern. So I'm done. And that really demystified video games because it was like, oh, somebody made this. And it's not this magic on TV. It's just like, maybe I could do this because it was just, a simple pattern that I could, learn and recognize. So that kind of demystified it. And then the Apple II just like opened the floodgates. I played Sneakers by Mark Turmel, who I later worked with, which was amazing, and played tons of Scott Adams adventures in the Apple II, and I made 15 adventures in my first games, and just for fun, I'm making one in peak weight right now, just a text adventure. So what do game makers do on their time off? Like nerdily make other games for no reason. Anyway, that's sort of what got me into games, though, and everything came out of those early Ultima 3 and Wizardry 1 and all those classics really inspired me to kind of do my own.
What kind of kid were you? Were you pretty nerdy? Kind of an
Yeah,
introvert or no? What would you say?
oh my gosh. Well, watch The Breakfast Club, and I'm Anthony Michael Hall. Just super nerdy. Basically, I was super introverted. And then at the start of high school, I got braces for all 4 years. So I was just thinking, like, and I was like, it was like Cyrano or something, I'd mumble a joke and then my less shy friend would say it out loud and I get a laugh and be like, yeah, we did it, or something. But, but then in college, I'd say something and kind of bury my head. And a friend of mine just said, why are you doing that? I want to hear what you have to say. And it was like, no one's ever said that before. And then suddenly I was taking improv classes and, getting out of my shell. But I'm sort of, what do you call, ambivert or something, like I occasionally, I'll go and do a speech or something like that. But then, like, if I'm talking, I'm in the grocery store and I can't talk to the checkout person. I'm just silent, like, nodding. So
That's awesome
that's,
to hear you took a improv class. I too took a class at the Groundlings down in Los
oh,
Angeles.
nice.
That's the training
Yeah.
ground for the Saturday Night Live folks. A lot of
I
them are
know,
Groundling.
that. I think Bill Murray came out of there, and Roy Newman for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of them came out of Second City. I just trained with somebody that taught or that came from Dudley Riggs in Minneapolis because I was in Madison, Wisconsin, so smaller market. But
Yeah, I
it
think I
was
was
fun.
19 when I took that class. Somebody suggested that. They said, if you want to get more comfortable and just I don't know, better with a public audience, go take some improv classes. And it was very helpful. I learned a lot in that class.
Yeah,
I use it
I think
today.
I think I'm just more comfortable doing that than actually talking to people. But anyway.
It's funny. I was a military officer for 8 years, and
Uh-huh.
standing up in front of a bunch of troops, 90% of it was improv. I wouldn't. Of
Oh,
course,
right.
you got to hide it though, and pretend you
Yeah,
know what you're
yeah.
doing. But
Yeah.
Those classes really help. So I'd like to hear a little bit about your time at SoftDisk and what the team was like, and just can you walk me through? Tell me what a day in the office was like there.
Uh, so while I have some pictures, I don't know if I have those. This is me in my first apartment right there. And there's my little Apple IIe computer. And then that's the first game I improved. It's a little crossword puzzle game, something like that. Somewhere around there, what was the, but basically, I was like, oh, this new job. And my dad drove me down. We drove all the way down from Milwaukee area, all the way down to Shreveport, Louisiana. And, he got me a little apartment and it was like super cheap. And then I went to work, and work is essentially offices kind of ramshackle made in an old mechanic's garage. They kind of like built it out. And so you park on top of it and you go into this leaky garage essentially. And yeah, and then on the wall, there's plaster on the walls and it's kind of dodgy, but my boss, Jim Weiler, was really cool, and kind of like it was sort of like the McDonald's of video games. It's like they weren't all video games. We're making like spreadsheets and utilities, and then some games, and then I was always excited about making those some games. And they bought my text adventures for like $0, but or something, maybe $100 or something. But it was cool. I was now a published game author, so that was exciting. Yeah, but I mean, we worked hard and like, kind of ridiculously hard, but it's like learning your craft, like Robert Rodriguez says, make 10 bad films, don't show them to anybody and just learn your craft. And that's what I was learning, just like, going from just like hobbyist to like, production level, fast as possible development.
I assume it was like a sort of LAN party atmosphere. Only you have deadlines and there's a little more stress.
Yeah, and LAN party atmosphere, but like before LANs or so, it was like it was so primitive, just like sneaker net kind of like, well, I'll do this on this thing, and like, oh, erased it. Well, I lost 3 days work. Oh dear, because nobody was thinking like, oh, maybe make a couple backup copies. But anyway, yeah, but it was like this crude, and the thing is like they would publish a like monthly software collection, and it's sort of like a magazine on disc. And originally, they would mail people that month's issue, and then the people would mail them back so they could reuse the disc. It was like that, low level, and then eventually started publishing like a little product that you could find like in a newsstand or something in a little plastic pack and stuff. But yeah, it was just kind of like a mom and pop thing that grew up in the area and kind of grew a little bit bigger.
Well, the games you made, both there and at id, have just timeless appeal. And my boys, I've got two young boys, and they enjoy playing Commander Keen and Doom. I even play Rise of the Triad sometimes, deathmatch with them. And
Nice.
I've got quite the collection of classic '90s gaming computers. There's one behind me, my Pentium 3,
Yeah, I was like,
and so yeah, I have them play on all original hardware, as you
ah,
and the team of
yes,
developers intended.
intended.
Yes.
Yes. Well, you gotta get the real experiences.
Yeah, I'd like to hear about id. So you decided to break off from SoftDisk and started with John Romero, John Carmack, Adrian Carmack. How did that happen? If you can
Well,
walk me through
yeah, I
that.
mean, so they I sort of just gave a speech on this, which is handy for my recollection. So they were up here, and they were like, Romero was working at a competitor called Uptime, and they went under. And then we said, oh, they do what we do. These are perfect people to hire. And it's like, yeah, they have a pretty good submitter called John Romero, and he's making all these cool games. And so he's, well, I'll go to work for you, but I want to learn PC development. That's the only reason. The only way I'll go there, because he was Apple II guy. And so uh, he came there to like start this game a month disc, which eventually became Gamer's Edge. I think I named that. But anyway, so he was there, and it was like, oh, like I took a picture of him. I think I have a picture of him somewhere back in the day. If you want to see John Romero, really young, there you go. There's him with a classical CD and Great White. Uh, but um, but yeah, we became fast friends. I think he wanted to know who I was because he came in to our office, but I wasn't there. But on my monitor, I just had like my menu screen, and it said like the the Adventures of Uncle Squishy and the Amazing Blopmeister or something for no reason. I just, like, oh, like this computer was for that or something. But he's all like, what the hell is that? And then we became good friends and make each other laugh. And we're two Apple II nerds. So we, like, oh, and like, I had Professor Lubert's book and blah, blah, blah. So that kind of worked out. But then we had a great submitter who submitted a game called Wraith, which was like a pretty cool RPG, and then a tennis game, which was kind of advanced. And we thought, like, man, we should probably like hire that guy. And Romero heard about that, and he said, like, oh, that guy'd be good for Gamer's Edge. And so that was Carmack. And so he like, said, man, you gotta come work for us. Gonna make cool PC games. And Carmen's like, nah, I think I'm cool. I'm gonna stick it out over here, Kansas City or something. And then I think a few months later, he goes like, yeah, money ran out. Okay, what do you guys do? And that's they got there. So now they're in Gamer's Edge doing a game a month. I'm over in Apple II disk, soft disk, kind of making games once in a while. And so I get done with my job, and those are two Apple II nerds. I would go over there in the Gamer's Edge office and, yap with them and say, hey, what you doing? We're doing this. It's like, oh, we need some sprites for this. And the artist's busy. And just like, I'll draw some stuff. I'm not the best artist, but I, if you can't, like Roger Wagner, a long time ago, who came up with sample two stuff. He said like if you can't draw small. And that was my my trick. No bigger than 16 by 16, but I got you up to there. And so I drew like stuff for his Dark Designs games, Carmack's one, and we did a shoot 'em up called Slordax and all sorts of stuff. So we kind of just really worked well together. And it's like I was doing like the levels, for Shadow Knight, stuff that they didn't particularly want to do. They were, coding the stuff. And like Romero's making tools, Carmack's going game engine, and it just kind of really worked well together. And then there's another guy there, Lane, and they're like he was wanting to stay in C, and they were like, oh, we got to do assembly to be fast. And so like we just kind of got along, and then that kind of grew. And then eventually one night Carmack was figured out a trick with a EGA card, so you can kind of use it limits of his buffer to kind of make scrolling happen quickly. And he did a smart tile refresh, which allowed it to be fast. And so you actually got smooth scrolling going on a PC, which is up to then possible. All the everything was moving on chunks. And so he showed that. There was like John's little Dangerous Dave guy bouncing around there. And I thought, that's amazing. And then I looked over and Romero was gone for the night or something. And I looked over and we had a Nintendo uh, over there, an NES playing Super Mario 3. I was like, it'd be funny. What if we made the first level of Super Mario 3 like tonight? And Carmack's like, yeah. And he doesn't get really excited, but that was just like, heck yeah, like, oh my gosh. And so he's busy coding and trying to make, tiles solid so they can jump on them. And I was sitting there pausing in Super Mario 3, trying to copy all the graphics, tile by tile. So I got those and it's like, okay, one means solid. And it's like, okay, I'll make that solid. And so we did just bam, 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 bam. 3:30 in the morning, we finished like a bad version of the first level of Super Mario 3. And we just put it on Romero's desk with a little post-it note that said type Dave 2. Like this is the second Danger. And so I made a bad title screen that said, Dangerous Dave and copyright infringement with Dangerous Dave and a lawyer from Nintendo. And we gave it, they're like, that is such a laugh. We're so humorous. And then we crashed and we got in late. And all of a sudden, Romero just grabbed us into the office, shut the door, and said, "Oh my God, I've been playing this all day. We are so out of here." And it was just like, what? It was like, it's a little joke. And he's like, no, man, this has never been done before. And that's the best of Romero, is that he could see the potential, like the through line of that kind of stuff. And so we like, okay, and but we said, well, I mean, we could just do this game for SoftDisk, I guess. And they said, no, we can't do that. It doesn't support CGA, the old four color mode, which is like, ancient by that time, but they were still like, trying to keep the mass market, and they were some of the lone people supporting that. So it's like, oh well. And I'm just like, well, I mean, if they won't do it, uh we have like a kind of a Mario demo, like what if we like try to get it to Nintendo or something? We're dreaming big, like that's impossible. But Jay Wilbur had been hired from Uptime too, and he was like an editor, and we said, and he knew somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody in Nintendo or something, and so we actually did those connections and actually got somebody in Nintendo, and
This was
they
while
said
you were
like,
still under SoftDisk.
yeah, well, yeah, yes, but it's just like, we don't know what's going on anyway. But anyway, so we were there, and they said like, like, I think maybe we sent them a little demo or something. They said like, whoever got it said like, that's really cool, make a real Super Mario demo. And so we just moonlighted and took our computers home because we had crappy computers. And we moonlighted for 2.5 weeks making like a real first level of Super Mario with the title screen and, the real first level and knocking coins out of blocks and everything. Everything you did, and then the star going up the end. And so we did that whole thing, and it was like, and then the next level was just in tiles wrote like it, that kind of thing. And we finished it and we sent it to Nintendo, and it got all the way to the head table. And it was like, oh my gosh, this is our dream. We're going to make Mario or something. And then they said, well, we don't want to get in the PC market. It's like, no. So what do we do? And in the same time, Romero had been getting all this fan mail, and the fan mail said, like, oh, I love your game, and this, it's a 6-year-old kid, and I love your game, I love your game, and it's an old grandma and stuff like that, and I love your game, I love your game, and then he's like, oh, so happy, and he had him pasted in the wall, and one day he's just looking at him, he's like, these are all the same address. Like, what's going on here? So, like, and had a phone number. He calls up, what the hell are you doing, man? It's like, and it's like, I'm just trying to get in touch with you. I want to publish your games. There's like, please let me publish something. And so that was Scott Miller from Apogee.
I interviewed Scott. He was one of the first interviews I did, and so great guy.
Yeah, I mean, like once we actually got to talk with him, he says like, hey, I'll send you pizza money if you start making a game for me. And they said like, oh, like make it wherever you want, and Kid Saves Galaxy or something. So I went off to my room, and 15 minutes later, I came back with like the fiction of Commander Keen and read it to them in a Walter Winchell voice, like Commander Keen, Defender, that kind of thing. And after I did it, like Carmack applauded. He's like, yeah, that's it. And then so we just started working on that, and that took 2.5 months, and that was the start of the whole thing. But it started as a joke.
And so that was under now id. And how did you guys grow the team for the company? Was it still just the four of you, or did you brought other people on?
Yeah, initially it was the three of us working on Commander Keen, and it's like like I'm doing all these levels, and it's like probably gonna have like Romero's getting done with the tool stuff, so like maybe he can help out, with the last few levels, and like if I'm doing that, I can't do like all the art, and plus there was like in the third episode there were like these sort of dog-like bipedal aliens that are like it got bigger than small sprites. So we need like a real artist, and we need a real artist for the title. So we talked to Adrian, and Adrian joined us, and that made a difference. Like there's so much better art than I was doing, and like it's like night and day, of course. And then we were, like it was sort of like the Gamer's Edge dudes, and then like and Adrian had been working on some Gamer's Edge stuff, and then but then once we all clicked, then it was like, okay, this is we're a company now, and this is it's software.
At id, Wolfenstein and Doom were obviously home runs that you and the team made, but they weren't your first FPS games. What was the
Oh,
progression to get there?
well, like I tell folks, like depending where you start, you could argue that Doom was our fifth first-person shooter because we did uh, basically Romero had talked to his friend Paul Neurath, Looking Glass, and he said, "Hey, like we're doing this cool new game, and it uses this technique called texture mapping. It's like you put pictures on the wall." And he told that to Carmack and I, and then Carmack just looks up and goes, "I could do that." And so we set on the progress to, or the path to try to do that. And so he said, "Oh, first we'll just draw colored walls, so they're dark on one side and light on the other, sort of like the dungeons and that we saw in early games like Ultimas and stuff." And so he did that, and we did a game with just solid color walls called Hover Tank, and so that was called Hover Tank One and various things. But it's basically you're a tank barrel and you're trying to save people, and there are aliens you had to shoot. And like, and me as a level designer, I'm like, I put a green cube. That's a tree. I don't know, or a bush maybe. But it's I tried to make the mazes interesting looking. But if you saved enough people, the guy gave you money and he was happy. And if you killed a bunch of people, then he's frowning, but he gives you a little less money. And that was the whole thing. Uh, and then that worked well. So we said, like, okay, now we're still in EGA. Let's try to texture the walls. So we wrote texture mapping and did Catacomb. And Catacomb 3D was like you're a mage, you're casting fireballs, and those fireballs sometimes hit walls that explode and destroy. And that was based on our 2D Catacomb game that we did for Gamer's Edge, but in 3D. And so, you explored this maze and, and rescued this dude or whatever. But it was pretty cool. And that was the actual texture mapping. So it was like, that's arguably the first one, but it's not a gun. So like, is it, and then we did Wolfenstein. And that was, grown up from EGA. VGA, it looks lovely. It's got a gun in the center, so that's undeniably the first person shooter. The others are possible. Then we did Spear of Destiny, sort of the commercial version of Wolfenstein, and then we did Doom. So like it was like a slow progression towards like getting a fully texture mapped environment, and it was weird doing Wolfenstein now because we were testing it and it's like no one's made this before. Kind of like, is that okay? Like asking the gaming gods, because like we were like, I got to design the first person shooter level. I got to define the first weapons you have in a first person shooter. Is like who gets to do that? Like there's like X people in X genres that get to try that first thing, which is an honor and humbling to do that. Yeah.
At what point after you released Wolfenstein did you realize that you had something truly special?
Well, we knew it was really cool. Like we liked it, so that was like pretty cool. And changing it from kind of the slow, uh, like there was another Wolfenstein game on the Apple II, and we the Beyond Castle Wolfenstein, something like that. And it was going back to the castle to try to kill Hitler or whatever. And we thought like we'll do that, and we were body dragging, and well, like put on a uniform so you can sneak past guards, and that just got to be too fiddly because we just had a really fast engine. It was slowing you down and making you press a bunch of buttons. So we said, just secret push wall, and I had to fight for push walls. Like I want, it's like Carmack's like this is inefficient in my engine, but it's like I have to have that 10% thing. Like you have your job, which is the core loop, and then you have to have your hobby, which is that 10% thing you do. You know, like you gotta have something to like break up the monotony essentially. And so finally we got those in. It's like, yes, okay, so now we have a simple brutal game, but it's got, some fun secrets to find.
They were
And
such an
that
important element to the game. I mean, I remember
yeah,
playing it. I'm a couple of years younger than you, so I think I was born in '83. So yeah, I was about 10 when I got it, and I remember the first time. I still remember it when I'm going along, I'm pushing spacebar. I hear this rumor that there's Easter eggs in it, and I remember when the wall moved, it was like it
yeah.
releases these endorphins, and you're like, "Whoa, there's more to the
What?
world."
What is going on?
Here it is, 32 years later. I still remember that.
Yeah. And the stupidest thing about Wolfenstein is we had an artist working on it for a little while, and we implemented animating walls. So you could like have a little texture in it animating, so you could put torches and stuff like that. But the first thing we got was like everything was misaligned, and then like wasn't getting fixed, and it just didn't seem like you even tested it. And it's like, that's not working out. So we'll just, part ways and just keep going. Completely forgot about animating walls because we were working so hard. And now it's like that technology is in the game and completely unused in the entire game.
Oh no,
Yep.
but you guys used it in Doom. So you
Yeah,
directed
yeah, there you
Doom.
go.
A few people have heard of that game, and then you headed to Apogee. What was that team like?
Yeah, Apogee people are really cool. It would, they were working on Duke Nukem 2 when I got into the office, and they thought somehow doing Duke Nukem would protect them from being sued by the GI Joe people for having the same character name, and just like that's not going to do anything. And Duke Nukem looks,
Oh, so
a lot
that's the
better.
difference between the spelling. I never knew where that came from
Yeah,
and why
it
it
was
changed to M in
yeah, it
three.
just it like if they sue, they sue. Like otherwise, come up with a different name. Like and uh and so I was creative director over Duke Nukem 2, and but it wasn't like it was seemed really unfocused, and it didn't have like any end to things, and it just like and I like did a font for it because the font was ugly, and it's just like there aren't any bosses, so I designed some bosses, and so that make it more interesting, and the it's like, well, like you need stuff to collect. Like what's different about Duke? I asked George, and he's like, well, or Todd, I forget who said it, but said, and I think George said he's really, really vain. He's a super vain guy. And I said, like, well, if he's so vain, he probably collects his own memorabilia. So that was what you collected in Duke Nukem 2. And that kind of infused, like, even made the character more vain and ridiculous. And by the time I got to Duke 3D, it was just like that is Hail to King, baby.
Your fingerprints are all over Duke Nukem 3D as far as humor is concerned. What did you do on that project?
Well, they basically did the whole game. They did a bunch of levels, and then uh, I, as far as game content, the only thing I did is when they said we got these billboard sprites that can just be positioned in 3D space or something. I said like, well, that sounds like you should make a laser, and that sort of turned into trip bombs, and that was just my favorite thing in Duke because like you have one of those little cubby holes you open up, you just put one in there and close it, and then it activates. So someone there's health in here, and it blows them. But but then they finish the levels and just like, Tom, can you come up with a story for this? And it was like, okay, there's a whole bunch of aliens and there's pink cops and then there's like hook like prostitutes, or strippers or I don't know. Like I asked them, and like they're I guess they're strippers on poles for some reason. So I just kind of like maybe the aliens are impregnating them. I don't know. It was like some kind of like horrible galaxy of terror kind of concept. But at least Duke is vain and crazy stuff's happening, and it kind of made sense out of why there were alien eggs and all that stuff in level, and so like I don't really claim that is a brilliant thing, but that is what came out of my head in 10 minutes. So
But it
there
was
you
such a
have it.
change from Doom and the others. It was so different to come into a world where you've got it just felt open. You've got humor. You're blowing somebody up. There's ludicrous jibs everywhere.
Yes,
And
stuff's
so I got to ask though,
interactive.
on that note, is it jibs or Gibbs?
Okay, I say this in a speech. Um, it comes from the term giblets,
Ah,
like, parts of poultry that, but it's like you blow up somebody with a rocket launcher and they turn into giblets, they turn into jibs. So,
jibs. There we
um,
go.
yeah, but I will take credit for Duke turning out well because Duke was turning into Lame Duke, which was later released, and basically everybody worked on Duke, and then at 5 o'clock they'd quit exactly and they'd start playing Doom,
Hmm.
and like eventually I just dragged George in a room, and I said like, dude, like people are playing Doom after working on this. You're trying to make a Doom killer. This is a bad trend. Like they should be wanting to play Duke really bad. This is turning out bad. Like you have to do something about it. So he got rid of that guy and took over the project and made it the game it is. So a big credit to George for just taking the reins and making a really hilarious fun action game.
Yeah, they built the dream team over there, and it all came together. I mean, Ken
Yep.
Silverman gave some technology that hadn't previously existed with sloped
Yeah.
elements and different things that gave it capability. I interviewed Ken too. He in his first interview aside from the FPS documentary, and it was really cool.
Yeah, really brilliant guy. He visited once when we were there, where the Rise of Triad team was there, and we had just been going to this local like Mexican food place, Tex-Mex place, and they had queso flamiado, which is just like queso that's on fire. They just put some alcohol, and they light it, and the alcohol goes away. But then we said, Ken, we're gonna take you to this restaurant and you'll be scarred by the queso flamiado. And then
And
you're
he was
like,
only 17 at the time,
I
right?
know, it was like that was really mean to do, and I apologized Ken profusely for it. And he was just like, "Oh no!" And so he just like didn't want to go, and so like, oh well, we kind of scared him off. But sorry for causing undue stress, Ken. But it was just queso. It's cheese. Melt the cheese.
And so you came up with a lot of great ideas throughout the years, but I'd like to hear about your best ideas that never were on the various projects that you've worked on. What were some of the mission and game ideas that you had that never came to be?
Well, I think unlike a lot of people, are like, oh, that's the one that got away. I tend to sort of like riff on the same idea if I don't get to do it. So, Doom, I wanted to have four different player characters with different speeds and different abilities. So it was like there was like different ways to play essentially, and it was kind of like coming with that before, like as we're inventing the genre, which is maybe too far ahead. That's my problem. But I did that in Rise of the Triad, so like you actually could experience those characters, and then as original designer on Prey came up with a name, and we were doing, but the engine didn't turn out, at least not fast enough. So I had an idea where you had three, strength, will, agility, and wisdom kind of attributes, and then the combos of those, which were like balance and whatever. And so you have these things, and these aliens were kind of throwing you in a Running Man kind of arena, and you would have to like be really, really strong in these levels, and you have to use your agility in these levels and stuff. And it started like having debates over the content of Prey, and like, oh, we just want to make it whatever. And so the Prey team eventually was tired of waiting for the engine, so they kind of left and went and formed a company that made Sin, like uh, ritual, and then I went with John to do Iron Storm, right? And eventually that came out and was whatever. And but it's a great franchise and so on, and the portals were really cool in the end. I did come up with grab paths for those because I had this like I could just see like you could go up this, go up a wall, and then go on the ceiling, and then you'd like in deathmatch you'd fire a grenade and it would go up, slow down, and then get caught in the gravity well and bounce on the ceiling. I was like, oh my God, that'd be amazing. So, but that grab path, I think eventually got in there, but or stayed in there. But then I wanted to use that idea, so that eventually became sort of like the gravity wells in Anachronox. So you could walk up the walls and you see people walking in the ceiling and stuff. And so a lot of the things like the ideas that got away, I just kind of keep percolating. It's like, oh, let me do a riff on that in some other fashion. And it's like, waste not, want not.
So it's led to many games. So when a rejection
Yes.
happens, when something gets turned down,
Yeah.
turns into another creation.
Keep it back in the notebook and just let it percolate.
Perseverance. So on that note, looking back at your career and all the extensive projects that you've worked on, what are you most proud of?
Well, I mean, I first off, Commander Keen, because it's a he's got a Packer helmet and everything and red Converse shoes, and that was basically me as a kid, except as a hero. And then I thought that was just convenient, but then I realized later that I was kind of picked on as a kid, and I was made more introverted because like I was, smart and nerdy, and then people picked on me for that, and that kind of made me curl up in a ball, right? And but Commander Keen was like saying, no, it's good to be smart and nerdy, and like you could be a hero and save the galaxy, and so it's a way to kind of heal my early inner child in a way, which is cool. I'm really proud of the universe we created in Anachronox. Like I came up with this big epic sci-fi story, and I'll have to get the other half of it out later. But it was it was hubris to do such a huge thing. But I think it really turned out cool, and it was really like it was sublime to ridiculous. Like you laugh out loud, funny. You got like best writing and best humor in a game to ear, and also you know real emotion. Like you get really kind of teared up at the end, and like when we made Jake made that into a movie for Machinima awards, and it won the best picture because like it was just like clearly like wow, this is like a real movie with like a through line of interest, and there's anachronox means poison from the past, and all the universe has that poison from the past story, and all the characters have a poison from the past story that they're all trying to heal.
Hmm.
So I think that was really cool. But I mean, I'm really proud of you know doing the first person shooter, building blocks, and that was really cool and honor to do, and coming up with clever solutions where like limitations are interesting.
It's interesting that you mentioned the healing power of games, both designing and playing. I mean, reading through John Romero's book, I'm seeing a lot of similarities to my own background. I mean, both him and I came from a pretty unstable background,
uh,
and I'm finding a lot of folks, whether it was some kind of trauma from getting picked on because they're nerdy, or from a messed up family background, or poverty, or something. There's this common thread among so many nerds that we poured ourselves into, whether it was playing games or programming them, and it had just such an immense healing power that I think people don't oftentimes get. I think it's so important for many aspects. I mean, it's
yeah, it's
just
like
even
I'm scared of for me it was like I'm scared of the world. I'll make my own where I'm safe, that kind of thing. But I
yeah.
mean, they have a healing power beyond that because in 2010 I had a stroke
Oh wow.
and I actually lost I droop
Mm.
on this side and lost muscle control, and then I had to relearn that. It's like I have to relearn my hand, and the iPad had just come out, and I said, my friends are, what can we do? What can we do? And just like, if you want to do something, chip in for an iPad, which I have a phone, so why would I buy one of those? But I got it, and I got Zen Bound 2 or something like that. So that's a game where you rotate a shape in 3D and kind of wrap a rope around it. And it just that's all you do. And it kind of just like have to completely wrap it and then it's done. So that was like the rehab I was doing, the physical therapy was like you're just picking up these little pegs from a bean thing and trying to put them in there, and it was like, and then holding them in my hand was tough. And that Zen Bound, did rotation, and it kind of retaught my hand to work. So I wrote them and said, "Thank you for making something that would help heal me." I tried to get the center to use that game, but they were like, "Oh, I don't know." They didn't
Mm.
see like this is like something really fun that people could do for hours outside of physical therapy, and I wrote them and thanked them. They said, "Well, this means more than any other letter we've received about this game. Thank you." So that game's healed me.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more aspects too that have yet to be researched. I know my father-in-law, before he passed away, for several years, when he would come over in his early 80s, I'd have him play Tetris, and he already had cognitive decline, and that was
Yeah,
one game that he excelled at, and it was so cool to
yeah.
see him working on that, and I really think that has a tremendous value.
The
And
same with my dad. He had Alzheimer's, and I got him to play Brain Age. I got him a
mm,
DS, and I got him to play Brain Age for a while, and that helped for a while. So, yeah,
yeah,
there's something there.
definitely, definitely, and also from just even if there isn't a physical or neurological thing going on with somebody, just being stressed. I mean, I run a telecommunication company that has been very stressful at times, and if I didn't pour myself into video games Friday afternoons, it would,
Yeah.
because
Well,
yeah, when you're controlling things, there's so many
yeah.
different elements that you need to focus on, that if you mess up or if your brain moves and wanders and starts thinking about something else, you'll get killed. And so you have to have that hyper focus, and you aren't thinking about the stressful stuff, and
Yeah.
you just feel recharged afterwards. I think my wife is finally starting to understand that a little bit, and
Yeah.
that I'm not just goofing off and playing games for no reason. But
Yeah.
yeah, the industry has definitely changed over the years. And before we wrap up, I'd like to see where do you see things currently?
Well, I mean, I think there something like may change in the industry just because there's so many huge, unstoppable juggernaut hits like Marvel movies, as the games like are coming, and they just have to be mild iterations of the previous one, or they might fail, and then there's that risk aversion, and there's great indie things. That, I mean, if you see experienced game developers go to a conference, they always go to the indies because that's where the new ideas are coming from, because they can be expressed. But problem is, there's thousands of indie games released every day. There's just like this glut. So hoping that there's a middle ground where indies can flourish better and double A games can get more cred. Like Helldivers was great, like bring more of that, bring more sort of like double A scale with triple A polish kind of, and just do one thing really well, and it's very exciting. And but as far as the future, like I mean, with all these insane tools that are coming. Forward, like things that help you code, and hopefully people aren't using the graphics stealing AI, but all the other AIs are fantastic, and that is just going to enable a lot of small developers to do big things, I think, and that's an exciting. I said like I recommend people, at least trying out new technologies and seeing what you could do that you didn't think you could ever do.
It's just so hard to monetize. I mean, all the tools are there. I use the analogy of uh, before, if you wanted to paint a picture in the video game industry, it would be like if you're a painter and you have to make the paintbrush, and
Yeah, exactly.
you have to go kill the cow and stretch the canvas and
Research how pigments work,
yes,
like so arcane.
But now you can go to Target and buy the whole paint set, but not everybody's going to be a good painter, but everyone has the opportunity, and so it's tough to monetize. There's a lot of noise, but there's a lot of great stuff.
Yeah, somebody just like worked on a game 5 years and they sold like 500 copies. It's like,
Yeah.
oh boy, it's rough, and also the industry is very rough. It's been the most brutal 2 years in the industry ever. Thousands of layoffs and studio closures. It's pretty tough.
Yeah, you got a lot of talented people out there probably finding other careers coding things that are not
Yeah,
that are boring, like you said.
yeah, they're boring, but
Yes.
boy, they're safe, and that's a good feeling right now. But I do have one last picture. So, oh, yes, this is the non-silly one. Yes, but luckily, my dad gave me a love for photography, so that's why I took pictures of it, and so these are the only pictures we have of early Ed.
Lastly, you mentioned Pico 8. What is that, and what are you up to these days?
Let me tell you. So Pico 8 is a fantasy console made by this guy named Zepp, and he basically said, "What if I sort of made a program that sort of emulates a old-timey console like a Nintendo Entertainment System or something, but it never existed. So I can just make up the constraints that I want. And so like it's 128 by 128 screen, and you have to use these 16 colors, and you code in Lua, and if you want to use all the sprites, you can only use half the map. Or you can use all the map and half the sprites. It's like you have to make weird decisions like that. And if you want some cool routine, you have to make it yourself. It's all in Lua, so it's easy to script and so on. And it has to fit in 32K tokens. And then by magic of steganography, he takes the code and the data and he encodes it in sort of the low bits or some alpha in the Apple channel of a PNG file. So it looks like the label of a cartridge, but it's actually hiding the data of the game in it. So you can give somebody a ping file and like that's the whole game. And it's really cool. So like it's really easy to make games, and it's really easy to abandon games. So it's like, they didn't work out. It's not too big, whatever, I'll do something else. But that's what the original in a game jam, the original Celeste was made in that. And they said, "Wow, this is really fun. Let's make that into a real game." And that became a hit. So that's like, so you could do that too, kids.
So where can people find out your projects on Pico 8?
You can go to my Lexalafel. Like you just search for Pico 8 and you'll find Lexalafel, and I'm on there as That Time Hall, or you can go That Time Hall at Itch.io. And I think I have links to those on my site, thattimehall.com. So
Well, thank you, Tom, so much for doing this. I'd love to get John Romero on. That would be. I'm finishing his book. I'm prepping for the interview for him, but he doesn't
yes,
know it
finish the
yet.
book.
So I'm going to
Finish
finish
the
the book.
book, and you will have the key questions.
Yep, yep. So thanks. Anyone else you think I should interview that you'd like to see me interview?
Oh my goodness, I'd have to think on that a lot. But I mean, all the industry luminaries. But I'd probably pick a bunch of old school Apple II folks like Bill Budge or
Well, I've got
or
Roberta Williams
Martin.
scheduled for next
Yeah,
week,
there you
so I
go.
can't wait for that one.
Yeah,
I
do
grew up
that.
playing a lot of those. So well, thank you so much, Tom. I really appreciate it.